Alright y'all, this video is going to be about a question that was posed to me recently by a fellow coach. It was to do with a client that was trying to get into a sumo squat. Alright, so sumo squat, I mean, looks pretty much like this. Their feet are pretty wide, slightly pointed out 30 degrees. They go into external rotation and they just keep this ER as much as they can all the way down. Okay, that's basically what a sumo squat is. Now, she was saying with her client specifically is that she would be in ER, and then what would happen was her foot would collapse into valgus, her knee would go into valgus, and she would be in this position. No matter what she did, she kept feeling like she would collapse inward. So what is going on with this person? Why is it happening? And how should we address the situation? Now, I think this is going to have to be broken up into a few parts today. First, we're going to talk about what's going on, how we can address it, and then the tools and methods are plentiful. But if you can start to think critically about what's happening joint by joint, you can begin to address this client in a more holistic fashion. Okay? This is for coaches. This is for also your general fitness enthusiast, all my athletes out there. This is for all of you. Okay? So if something doesn't make sense, just keep following along. As we do more of the videos, it will. So let's talk about it. So let's think about the hip joint. Let's think about the ankle joint, the knee joint, every single joint in your body, and see what's needed. What are the prerequisites for that movement? Okay? I think some of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, one, why are we trying to put this client in a sumo squat? What am I trying to achieve with the client when I do that? That's number one. Once you get very clear on that, number two is, okay, what are the prerequisites to get this person in the sumo squat? And if you go back, if you even go back to number one, you're asking yourself, why am I doing it? Well, are you trying to get them a better deadlift, a better sumo deadlift? Are you trying to get them to be able to pick up boxes off the ground in real life? Are they a sumo wrestler? Are they someone that plays football, needs to get in a wide stance and create power through their hips? Absolutely needs to do that. And then what is their purpose? Why are they doing this? Or they just want to feel better throughout their everyday life. And then you address the prerequisites. After you understand the prerequisites, you also need to understand that when I say prerequisites, I mean what's needed at each joint in the body, right? So if you start with the hip joint in this example, what's needed to be able to get into that nice externally rotated position that the client needs to be in? Knees out wide, twisting the floor, you're nice and open to your groin here, you're able to activate your glutes and feel them the entire time. Your hamstrings are on. What's needed there? So let's talk about that. So most people think external rotation is what's needed only, right? So, and that's important because you look at the position, obviously external rotation is needed to get into the right position. That makes sense. You can see it in my body, yeah. But what most of us don't understand is that internal rotation is just as important. So if you're looking at the socket here, here's the socket, you're looking at my left side, okay, left hip. Here's the head of the femur where the bone sits, and here is the actual bone that comes down, okay? So ER would be it sitting back in the socket. IR is coming forward in the socket, okay? So if you are, say if someone is stuck in internal rotation because they sit all day, and their adductors, all the muscles here have gotten really tight, hip flexors have gotten tight, the psoas has gotten tight, IT band's got locked really short, and it's pulling you in. Say that's possibly what's happening with this coach's client. It's pulling her in. If it's pulling her in and she's stuck in internal rotation, it doesn't mean that she has full internal rotation. It just means she's stuck in a degree of internal rotation, okay? That's something to understand. And now for someone to have a healthy joint that's able to produce power, stability, appropriate force, it needs to be able to go from a full internal to a full external. If you are stuck in internal, like right here, at that range, and you're only able to move through this much ER, it's because you don't have the full IR. And that should make sense, because you only have power through this much range. That's why she can't produce force or even feel her glutes appropriately. They can't fire all the way because she doesn't have the full range of motion in the socket. So, what does that also mean in terms of pure anatomy? Internal rotation of the hip is needed because it gives you also extension of the hip. But also, It allows for flexion, appropriate flexion of the hip while squatting. So just a lot of things, y'all. It gives you hip extension, and it gives you also hip flexion. If you don't have that range, you can't squat, period. Because what does a squat require? Even the beginning of a sumo squat needs her to come into extension, right? Hips need to come through. And she can't get into proper extension if she's lacking IR. And the same goes with proper full squatting if she's lacking the same thing, right? So that's something to really understand. It's a common misconception, like, oh, she's already in IR, don't put her there. Well, she needs to probably go there, right? So address both sides of the equation. She probably needs this for sure. She probably definitely needs that, okay? And a way you can think about it too is, once you address the joint ranges of motion required, the prerequisites, then you can look at the muscles that are involved with IR, the muscles that are involved with ER. And you can list which ones are overactive, really, really short and tight, which ones are long, but also locked in that position. What needs to be contracted, what needs to be lengthened, right? But then also, after you've done that, then what do you need to activate? What muscles need to fire? And then what movement patterns, corrective exercises, do we need to integrate to fix the sumo squat? Now, this is kind of a nice little way of structuring your thought process. If you're a coach, if you're just a general human being, whoever you are, it's a good way to do it. Now, that's one part, right? We address the hip, the knee. Now, the knee is kind of like the middle child between the hip and the ankle, okay? It gets the brunt of whatever the hip does and the ankle does, right? If the hip's jacked up, guess what? Your knee's probably jacked up too. If your ankle's jacked up, you bet your knee's gonna get the brunt as well, okay? So the knee joint's controlled by the hip. So if you don't have proper ER and IR, guess what? This is gonna be all jacked up and painful. So, but it's also controlled by a muscle called the hamstring, which flexes the knee, right? Boom, which is required for squatting too. And it also does what? Extends the hip. Does she have proper hamstring engagement? Can she feel the hamstring in a sumo squat? Yes, you should be able to feel it, y'all. It's not just glute, it's not just groin, it's also hamstring, okay? And if she doesn't feel that connection, she's not gonna get down properly, okay? Then if you go down further, it's a terrible drawing of the foot, but this is my foot, and a terrible limb length. But if you're looking at the foot, the general rules of the foot are that for most people that have problems getting into that nice externally rotated position, it's because there is a discrepancy between the inside of their shin and the outside of their shin. And this goes all the way up, y'all. It affects everything up to the adductors, the hip, all of that. And most people have an overactive posterior tibialis, this muscle right here, overactive gastroc, which basically has a job of plantar flexing the foot. And they have an underactive anterior tib. So one of the biggest things they need to improve is something called dorsiflexion, which is required for them to be able to do a proper squat. It also allows that person to keep their foot and their shin and their hip in proper external rotation, okay? So the anterior tib, it inserts into the arch in this fashion right here. So you can think about whenever I engage that thing, you see this muscle fire, it's lifting the arch, it's allowing my foot to get away from this collapsed position that what she's probably doing is collapsing inward like that in her sumo squat. So she needs to strengthen this muscle, release some of the tension here, and really focus on strengthening this. Okay? And it doesn't mean she's isolated to just strengthen this muscle. After she does this, she can go on the staircase and do full calf raises. After she's addressed this length discrepancy, she needs to be able to go to the full range too. Full dorsiflexion, full plantar. Otherwise, she can't produce the proper force. Just like the hip, there's no difference, okay? Full range of motion equals more power, more strength, more stability. All right, so that's how you kind of address that. And if you want to go up the chain, you can go up the spine too. You can look at the psoas, right? What's going on here? Is the psoas pulling her hips out of alignment? If she's here, how can she feel anything at all? She's stuck into her lower back. She can't feel her glutes or her hams. You have to address this pelvis connection. Go up to her T-spine. Her mid-back's turned off. Can she have the proper alignment to even squat? Probably not. Your mid-back controls your entire posterior chain, This is not firing, this will not fire at all. Okay? Are your neck and your traps up here? Guess what? You have no core control, no diaphragmatic breathing happening. So there's no way you can connect from your core to your limbs if you're up here. And the most important thing we have to understand is this is always paramount. Start with your midline and your limbs will follow. If your midline's jacked up, the rest will not work. Okay? So you've kind of seen this patterning now from the foot, the knee, the hip, the spine, the low back, the T-spine, the neck, and the shoulders, right? How important that is. So now you have kind of a pattern here. Release, activate, integrate. You write down exactly what joint ranges of motion you need with a movement. What are the joint ROMs at each joint? And then you address and acknowledge what muscles put that joint into the ranges of motion you desire. And then you decide what's tight, what's locked long, what's locked short, what do I need to activate, what do I need to integrate, okay? So with that being said, we're gonna break this video into more parts. This is the first video just to help you understand what's going on. The methods and tools are plentiful. The first method we'll go into is probably addressing the foot and some hip stuff. That'll be in the next video. Make sure you check it out. This is just understanding the theory behind it. If you enjoyed this video, it was insightful for you, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you hit like. Until next time, y'all.